We're here to talk about space station today, and let's get serious. I'll quit messing around. We got a great panel here. I'm not going to go through the introductions. I'm going to turn it over to them and let them introduce themselves and do their introductory remarks, and then we'll get to a couple of questions and audience questions. So use the QR app to help give us some questions. I've got them all here, and we'll move on. John, I'm going to turn over to you first.
Hey, I really appreciate it, and thanks for your attention. Hey, this panel and the focus of our group is not ISS forever. Right? There are three vital pipelines that we have that are required to successfully transition to the CLDs, and our motivation, right, is to make sure that we set the CLDs up, which will require these three pipelines, so that they can successfully transition and actually expand U.S. leadership and the LEO economy, right? It's incredibly important. And those pipelines are crew transportation, cargo transportation, and science. And it's incredibly important that the CLDs have all of those, because if they don't, there's no way they can be successful. And it's imperative that we maintain the ISS and fully utilize it through that transition, right? We need to have the ability to turn over all of the operations. And unfortunately, even today we're seeing impacts across all of the panel members that are putting in jeopardy the ability to successfully transition to the CLDs. So on the ISS side, in particular, we're seeing some resource cuts and cuts to the required spares that are needed to successfully make it to 2030 and potentially a little bit longer if the CLDs need a little bit more time. But that transition is incredibly important. It is great to have a target for 2030. Everyone needs to have a target to shoot for, but if the CLDs need a little bit more time, we need to make sure we can get there. And actually, the great part about the three pipelines is essentially they're fungible, right? The crew vehicles, the cargo vehicles, they can go to any LEO platform. The science that's created will be able to be absorbed on ISS or any of the CLDs. So making sure we keep those healthy pipelines are going to be incredibly important. On the ISS today, we're doing more science than we've ever done. And with the addition of the additional crew member, we're seeing double the amount of crew time dedicated to science. It was really interesting. I was talking to Sunny Williams last week, who, as you know, just recently came back from the ISS. And she said it was remarkable. The last time she was on ISS was in 2012. And the science capability that's there now, the additional power, the solar arrays that partnership with Boeing and Redwire have been phenomenal. She was talking, she said she was blown away. There was a moment in time along just one axis of the ISS. She was doing stem cell research in the GEM and looked down. Don was doing some rodent research, right, just through Node 2 into Columbus, and Butch was assisting with some human research, right? Just one moment in time on the ISS, not even factoring in the additional science that was going on the other axis. So that full utilization and the work that we're doing now are hugely important, right? And we've got to maintain them. And the last thing I'd say about ISS before I turn it over, there is no more important platform for risk reduction for the exploration missions than the ISS. It's the highest fidelity platform we have, especially on life support, to test both the efficacy and the longevity of the systems that are going to be needed, for 9-month plus missions as we move out, beyond Earth orbit. And they're just incredibly important that we can't have failures on those systems. But anyway, I appreciate your time. Let me turn it over to Dan.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, real quick. I failed John. Pay attention to the timer. Everybody needs a chance.
Yes. I used your time.
Go ahead, Dan.
Great. I'm Dan Taney. I'm with Northrop Grumman. I work in the Human Exploration and Operations Department, which the Cygnus cargo vehicle is part of our portfolio. And so I'm here representing the cargo transportation aspect at ISS. I'm so proud, Northrop is so proud to be participating in ISS, providing hundreds of thousands of pounds of cargo to the space station. We've had, in our 12-year history of flying Cygnuses, we've flown 21 missions, 22 coming up in a couple months. And we feel, again, proud to be part of the ISS endeavor. In developing the product line of Cygnus, we have made significant improvements over the 12 years. We've doubled the cargo capability. We can now accommodate live animal science. We actually reboost the space station, so we've become more of an infrastructure asset to the space station. And historically, over the past 12 years, we've been flying about 2 missions a year, which is a very comfortable production and operational rate for us. But now with these slowdowns, we're being asked to go a little bit slower, maybe 2 flights over 3 years, and that is really putting a stretch not only on our own production rate, but also our suppliers are really screaming and claiming that it can't get much less than that. And so we are very concerned about the transition from ISS to CLD. We are actively making sure that our vehicle, our service, is going to be compatible with any provider that gets up there in CLD, or any other provider that may be able to get in low Earth orbit. And so we're anxious to be part of the next generation. We just need to make sure that we can survive that transition. And so we do have a big concern about not only our own workforce, but our supplier base, and make sure that when the CLD is up and operational, we can bring the cargo, we can bring the science up to them. And so, that's our really big concern. I've heard at this conference a desire to do more and more science, that there's a backlog of science, and we certainly wish the administration would concentrate these last 5 years or so of ISS by really making a big push, doing more and more science, and we could up our rate, we could up our flight rate and bring more and more science, more and more resources up to station. We would love to see that, to see ISS really go out with a big bang, and then a leap board to CLD, so we can start science right away on the CLDs.
Thank you, Dan. Christian.
Thanks, guys. Hi, I'm Christian Mender. I have spent my entire career in utilizing the International Space Station in one form or another. And so when we get to talking about building the low Earth orbit economy and how important it is for the transition to the next commercial destinations, I have a fairly unique viewpoint. I helped start Axiom Space 8 years ago, and now I'm with Barrios Technology, which is a company that does engineering and program integration for NASA and all of their human spaceflight programs. And in particular, a large part of what they do for human spaceflight programs is integrating the International Space Station and helping make sure that that program runs day to day, and all the science that gets done on that space station is organized in the best fashion possible. And so Barrios, from that position, has a very unique viewpoint on consequences of what I would call arbitrary budget cuts in this time of need in terms of building this low Earth orbit marketplace. With the president's budget request that has come out in this year for FY26, the threats and the budget cuts that NASA is having to consider being directed through the executive branch are pretty severe. Just to give you an insight into what would happen to the work that we do, we would expect that up to 100 employees would need to be riffed or reduced in force because of these budget cuts. And if you take that and you think about that across the industrial base that supports NASA, it's a huge swath of talent. And once you lose that talent, you don't get it back. And in fact, because of this budget uncertainty that's been unfolding, we're already seeing some of our best talent depart because of budget uncertainty. And it's a consequence that we can't afford to do too much of, because what happens when you lose that talent is you permanently damage the ability to continue the work that's been done on the space station, even if Congress comes back with FY26 budget that is sustainable. And so we really need to be thinking about how we address this risk now. With these budget cuts, we've already heard that we're talking about reductions in cargo capacity. That naturally transitions or leads to a reduction in the number of crew that can go to space. That leads to a massive reduction in the amount of work that we can do on the space station. And I think it's not too dramatic to say that if we cut the way that the president's budget request has suggested we enact, we will have, for the next 4 years, we will have astronauts flying to the space station as custodian and caretakers of a mothballed facility, because there won't be any resources to actually do research. And so we really need to think about, as a community, how we make sure that the whole of government acts in the appropriate way to make sure that NASA is made whole to continue this work. I think I'll stop there and pass it on to Rads.
Thanks, Christian. Dave Radznowski, Rads. I'm currently chair of the board of Space Station National Lab. And first of all, I'd like to just thank AIAA immensely for embracing Space Station National Lab's activities that when we canceled the ISS R&D conference, which is an opportunity to tell about the story of what the work that we've been doing on the space station. And AIAA opened their arms and said, hey, come to Ascend, tell your story. So thank you, AIAA, for that. I truly do appreciate it on behalf of the entire CASES team. The one thing I'm gonna focus on is, we have launch and capabilities, cargo. I'm gonna focus a bit on what we do at Space Station National Lab. We have responsibility for 50% of the US core segment on station. NASA is contracted with us, and we manage that component that's focused on commercial, nonprofit, and non-NASA government activities on the space station, which to me sounds like the commercial LEO ecosystem and LEO of the future, right? We're starting the seeding of what comes after space station. At the end of 24, we had 15 commercial service providers, 35 implementation partners. And just to give you an idea what those are, the implementation partners are the folks, the smart folks that are able to work with the researcher and investigator to put the payloads together that goes to station with the ride on you all guys, and then gets the results or the outcomes or the failures that we learned from on station, so the next time we come up, we can do it even better. The commercial service providers, they have the facilities on station. These are commercial facilities. These are not NASA facilities. These are actual commercial entities that have the facilities that we use or are building the future facilities, right? So we get excited about launch and cargo and these platforms and everything. The reason we're there is to do science, investigate, and discover and move forward. So that's what we are focused on. And I always, as it was up through 25, felt it was a challenge on this transition as to begin with, to transition those IPs and the CSPs. Not that they all should survive, they shouldn't, but which ones will be appropriate as we move to the CLD platforms? It was already an enormous challenge. And when we've heard it already, the FY26, and I'm just gonna read this to you. So as chair of the board of Space Station National Lab, it comes out in May, and I read this language. And by the way, I've written this language before for previous NASA budgets. This is intentional language. This is not somebody somewhere writing some language goes through. This is very intentional. The budget significantly reduces research and other activities on board the ISS. ISS is replanning for maintaining minimal safe operations. That minimal in there is not something that was just thrown in there, it's purposeful. Minimal safe operations, very limited research only to support Moon and Mars exploration. It's not what ISS National Lab does, until its retirement in 2030. So I read that and I said, all right, I'm going to shift gear as chair. I'm going to now shut down our contract. Was my first reaction. Not doing that. But we had a challenge to begin with, even with the 25 budget. Significant challenges, as the folks here are all aware. If 26 is enacted, we have a significant challenge of the ecosystem that we have built that will support the CLDs going forward. How are they going to survive? Will they survive? And my God, I know a lot will survive. No matter what happens, I trust our community to be able to be for it. So that's where I am. Where I am today is, guess what? Politics is good. Need to go to the Hill. You need to go to the White House. I don't know if they're going to change their mind. OMB, they have a vision. It's a legitimate vision. Not one I agree with, but it's legit given the constraints in the budget. So, but you still should be not ignoring them and talking. The second thing is, I don't know how this is going to play out. And honestly, if you ask me a question, I'm not very optimistic in terms of the budget going forward. But I am optimistic of this group and this folks out here, of our ability to be creative, innovative, to make this work with less as best as possible so that we can get on to the CLDs and continue movement forward in the ecosystem. I'm sorry I'm preaching. I'm just very passionate as to where we stand today, but I want to be optimistic that I really think we can do it. And so I think I went way over Dan's time.
And it was a very important statement. So thank you for that, Dave. Much appreciated. Mike?
I can't see the clock, so I can't be held accountable.
It's down to 12 minutes.
Yeah, I'll bet. So let me begin by echoing what Raz just said and be more specific about the potential benefits and what we can lose. So at Redwire, and thanks in large part to partnerships with ISS National Lab, we launched the biofabrication facility, the BFF, that we used to print the first meniscus in space. Who needs a meniscus? I could use 2. Later, we printed live cardiovascular tissue and brought it back from the International Space Station, still live. That will lead to innovations to help people with heart disease. And where this is headed is eventually the printing of whole organs. Go drink all you want tonight. We'll print you another liver. But this is what we're talking about, and this is not science fiction. This is what's happening now. And then let's talk about pharmaceutical development. Redwire has flown 28 pill boxes. We have pill boxes up there now. We'll launch more in the next cargo resupply. Those are creating seed crystals for drugs that are larger, more uniform, and will lead to new therapies that have better efficacy, better longevity. We flew, in partnership with Eli Lilly, new insulin crystals that led to the prettiest crystals for insulin that Eli Lilly has ever said. Keytruda, working with Merck, they flew a cancer treatment that will transform that treatment from IV to taking pills. We are at an inflection point where pharmaceutical and biotech are coming together in a space in a fashion that will revolutionize both fields. I have no doubt that we are at the beginning of a new era. The only question is, will those benefits be seen here in the US, in the free world, or is it going to occur in China? And if we follow the PBR, I can give you the answer to that question, and Beijing will be very happy. And let's be very clear what that PBR does. We will drop from 4 to 3, and then potentially 2 astronauts. For the first time in my life, there will be more Chinese astronauts in space than Americans. That should be unacceptable. Unacceptable to everyone on this panel, unacceptable to everyone in this room. And John, you talked about the rollout solar arrays. Success in Beyond LEO and on the moon will be built in low Earth orbit with the International Space Station. The ROSAs are an excellent example of that. And thank you for Boeing's support and the innovation you brought to the ecosystem by supporting what was then a small company. The rollout solar arrays tested, demonstrated on the International Space Station, will be used for Gateway, will be used on Mars, and we're now building for commercial geotelecommunication satellite customers. This is an incredible story of a NASA technology that's being commercialized. And if we didn't have this capability on the ISS, we'd be proving it for the first time on the moon. So beware of false dichotomies. I hate this moon, Mars, Leo. They are all integrated. And we begin with the capabilities in low Earth orbit. But getting back to what Redwire's doing, what Axiom's doing, what all of us are doing, these are incredible benefits that we will be ceding to the Chinese. So let me just emphasize what Dave just said. My grandfather worked on the Apollo program. My mother worked for NASA Hunch. I'm the third generation to stand up and contribute to American aerospace. I do not want to leave my son a world where we cede low Earth orbit, our international partnerships, and the moon to the tender mercies of the Chinese Communist Party. So call your congressman, stand up, fight for American leadership, fight for our future in space.
Excellent.
And now I have to follow that. Wish me luck. No, well said. Absolute good words, and very much of a very true point. Scary as it is, it's real. So hi, everybody. My name is Heath Mills. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer for Rhodium Scientific. We are, with a lot of what was said here, we are one of the commercial service providers to the ISS National Lab. So we're one of the companies that Rads was talking about. We're also an implementation partner. But our distinction and difference within this industry is that we're also a biotech company. We're actually the first true space biotech company. And so we look at the ISS, we look at low Earth orbit, we look at the microgravity environment slightly different. We look at it as an environment. We look at it as an area for advancing different biotech initiatives from regenerative medicine, biomanufacturing, drug discovery, drug development, and even into ag tech side. And we have some hardware. We have our facilities as a commercial service provider. But one of the things that we get and have conversations with a lot is that with all of these advantages, from printing new meniscus to doing stem cell work to doing drug discovery, why now? We've been in space for 70 years. Why now? Why is it now is the time to invest in space biotech? Why is now the time to go and do this? And one of the things that we say to it is access. Access is extremely important. You roll the clock back 10, 15 years, and if you started a mission, you were looking at a cadence of about 3 to 5 years to get to space. Within the biotech industry, there are exit plans that are 5 years out. They're not going to wait for a single mission to go to space to test something if they do it once every 5 years. And so one thing that we did at Rhodium, we got our agreements with the ISS National Lab about 5 years ago, and we started working with the Department of Defense. We started working with DTRA, and there was a program manager that said, we need mission readiness. We need to be able to test new countermeasures, develop new countermeasures, and we need to do it quickly. Can you start a mission, fly a mission, return a mission, do the analytics, and can you do it in 1 year? We did. And all of a sudden she said, you know what, now this is mission readiness. She said, do it again. We did it 5 times. We then ran the largest biomanufacturing program that DARPA has ever done on the ISS with 4 missions in 20 months. That allowed our teams to go, learn, come back, redesign, reset up, go again, and iterate of an entire process. That allowed the Department of Defense to look at specific countermeasures for different areas, from radiation therapies to point source manufacturing, in situ resource utilization, all of these different areas. We allowed it to then be tested at a cadence that was at the speed of business, at the speed of biotech. With the new access points and the reduction of vehicles going forward, we cannot support the DoD. We cannot support them. We cannot fly at the cadence that they need to challenge emerging pathogens, create new therapies, protect the warfighter, but also protect us. We cannot service the DoD simply because of access points. We can't get there. So we have the access points. We have this. We're talking about moving forward within this industry with a very uncertain future. We talk about this loss of astronauts to taikonauts. We talk about not able to get to station 2 times in 3 years instead of 2 times each year from Northrop. And we appreciate the rides that we've gotten there and the great research done. But with this, we've been talking about a gap. We had a gap with shuttle. Horrible. JSC area, where you're located in Houston, the area really took a huge hit because we had a gap between shuttle and the first crew missions that went up with Bob and Doug. Well, we're talking about the gap right now with the CLDs, with the ISS. And we were saying, we were up on the Hill just about 6 weeks ago, and we were saying that the gap starts now. Because of the budget, the gap starts now. But I want to say that's wrong. The gap does not start now. We've created a cliff. Because a gap says there's something on the other side. The gap says we can bridge the gap and we can start going again. But with what you've just heard here, you're losing workforce, you're losing talent, you're losing momentum, you're sending it overseas. You're not producing a gap, you're producing a cliff that our industry will fall off of. Our advantage, our lead, our overall way of life within this emerging next step will be gone if we go with the PBR, if we go with where OMB may be pushing funds and requesting funds to go. We do not create a gap, we create a cliff. And I challenge anybody to prove me wrong on that. Simply, in the ask we got from the White House, we were sitting in the White House at OSTP just 2 weeks ago, and they asked, what was the ask? What do you need? Access. Return the number of vehicles going to station back up to 5. Put 4 crew members back on station. Keep that there, and this industry will innovate. We will produce those next steps, those next leaps, those next therapeutics, those next huge discoveries. We are at the precipice of those big discoveries. With what we're doing right now, it's a cliff, it's not a gap.
Thank you, Heath.
Jared?
Jared.
I'm going to talk really fast, 'cause we only have
It turns out we got a little bit more time than I thought we did, so you're good.
Okay. I didn't want to make you mad, Dan. So good morning, everybody. My name is Jared Stout, and I have the privilege of working at Axiom Space, where I am the Chief Global Policy Officer. But I've spent most of my career working in policy and politics. This is my first gig on the business side of things. And I think, first of all, for anybody who's here that might work for the government, I highly encourage you to spend time in industry if you haven't done that before, because it'll make you a better policymaker. I really wish that I had done that before I was working in government, because I think you get a lot of really great perspective being out here in industry that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise. Lots of great words that have already been said here that I don't want to belabor the point. I mean, I think everybody gets the point that's being made here. But 2 things that I would offer as someone who's been involved in U.S. government policy and strategy from the White House to Congress to regulatory agencies. The first is that the things that we're seeing that are happening right now, the potential reduction of crew on the ISS, the reductions in science, all of the effects that we're seeing that are happening right now, those were decisions that were made like years ago, right? Like we're all talking about it now because we're feeling it, but the decision to reduce funding to things over several budget periods over the last 3 or 4 years, what we're really seeing is that the chickens are coming home to roost for the decisions that have been made over the last few years. NASA didn't decide to stop having as many cargo flights as it had before just because of the PBR. Those decisions were made in budget and appropriation cycles over several years. And so as a community, we're all reacting now because we're seeing the effects of it. But the truth is that as a community, we ignored the warning signs over the last few years, and now that we're feeling the effects of the warning signs, everybody's reacting. Now, the president's budget request obviously is not what a lot of us in industry wanted to see, but I would really challenge the community to think of it as an opportunity. And what I mean by that is that we've had a few decades now of continuous human presence, something that is critical for a lot of science research and something that we really need to maintain. But NASA is not going to be able to carry the burden of this ecosystem by itself moving into the future. And for that matter, if we really want a LEO ecosystem that is vibrant and innovative and is spinning off all types of new and interesting investments, then as an industry, as a community, we're going to have to figure out creative ways to do that. We're going to have to figure out how to partner with each other with non-traditional partners. We're going to have to figure out, if you're in the science community, we're going to have to figure out how do we get our universities and our research institutes to think differently about how investments are made into microgravity science, because that's the only way that it's going to happen moving forward. The other thing that we really need to spend some time thinking about is how our international partners continue to work with us moving forward in a way that benefits both the United States and their domestic industries as well. I think the future of LEO is in industrial diplomacy. I think the future of LEO looks like our companies working with companies in other countries to build up an ecosystem that can be sustained absent any particular government's political decisions this way or that way. I think we have to figure out how we're going to make those investments on our side and then go get government customers or get government investment. That's what public-private partnerships are supposed to be. The whole idea behind commercial space is that the government is one of many customers. But I think for a really long time, we've just allowed ourselves to be completely convinced that the only way we're going to do that is through funding at NASA. So we need to continue to broaden what our strategy looks like for developing this. And at Axiom Space, we're investing heavily in opportunities for that. We're looking for partners everywhere that we can because we believe that the next step in this evolution is going to look more like industrial cooperation than it is government-to-government cooperation. Best part about industrial cooperation is that countries that buy things from each other don't usually shoot at each other. So we have an opportunity there that is really important, and I'd really, really encourage us all to think about what that looks like. And then the final thing I'll say is echoing the transportation piece of this. And this goes both domestic and international. None of this matters if we can't get to space. So if over the next 5 years we don't have transportation systems that have regular access to LEO outside of the current transportation systems that are going to space regularly, then we're not going to be able to reach any of our space stations in LEO because we will have killed off all of the opportunities for cargo and crew transportation past 2030. I think that's another area where we're going to have to get super creative and figure out how we can do that. Happy to talk to anybody that's interested in what that might look like, but really appreciate the time today and appreciate all the good words that have already been said.
Well, thank you.
Can I talk for a moment about the international partnerships?
Feel free. Go right ahead, Mike.
Diplomacy.
We were going to get there anyway, but go.
I got you. Well, I can't wait. So when the PBR was released, Chinese space leadership reached out to all of the heads of space agencies, our international partners, ESA, CSA, and said, how's it going working with the Americans? And while we need to talk about how LEO affects beyond LEO and Artemis, we also need to talk about how Artemis affects LEO. And when we said America's going to drop out of Gateway, imagine what that signals to the international partners who have already spent billions on those systems. If you're the head of ESA, what's it like going to your member states and saying that we want to continue to cooperate with America in low Earth orbit on the moon. Trust them this time. When I negotiated the gateway agreements at NASA, the one piece of popular culture that we taught the Europeans was peanuts, Lucy and the football. They said, why should we believe you? Because we have had a history of being unable to sustain a program. Not only is failure an option, it's been a certainty since Apollo. And if we ever want to credibly lead and engage in any arena, whether it's low Earth orbit, what's beyond low Earth orbit, we have to sustain our credibility, which means continuing with Gateway, continuing with Artemis. And let me be clear that this is not an equal playing field. That when we talk about China reaching out in LEO, they're offering to do it for free. And we're not prepared, I think, from a policy perspective as a nation to be able to take on that challenge. So if you're an international partner and you see America saying, we're going to choke the ISS, we're going to drop down to 2, no more seats for you, we're going to drop out of Gateway, we're just going on to Mars, that's a real challenge for diplomacy, not only for the government, but for the private sector as well. And let me just say, and Heath, I think you put it well, while the science is important, this is a national security issue. Having fewer astronauts up there is a national security issue. Seeding the moon is a national security issue. Let's be clear what we're dealing with in China. That's the PLA. They're running the program. There is not a separation like we have here in America. For all the good that we can do with meniscuses and new drugs, there's a lot of bad that can be done. So this isn't just about launching astronauts or launching technology. This is about launching our values. Are the values in space going to be freedom and liberty, or is it going to be an autocracy run by China?
So thank you for that, and thank you for everything you guys have hit on in this first few minutes. I would like to record this and then go use it. I have a question for you, and it really revolves around the passion on the FY26 budget. And that is, we have a group of people out here in a larger community. As I'm sensing it, there are two things that can be done, two fundamental things. How can we do better, more efficiently? And how do we participate in the participation sport called democracy? Given the words here and given the great basis what recommendations, as specific as you can get, on those two fronts, what can this community do to bring the efficiency and participate in the democracy sport? Heath, you want to?
Let me jump on that one real fast. And I will say this as a scientist, so I'm not being disparaging to the scientists because I'm pointing the finger at myself as well, is communicate, communicate, and communicate. We have a very serious problem when in Houston, when we're talking to a potential customer, we're talking out in the crowd, in the audience, and they turn to us and say, oh, so when are you flying on the shuttle again? All right, we have a communication problem. We're not properly telling what's going on within the space industry if somebody in Houston is talking about the shuttle. From a science perspective, what's come out of the space station? What results have come out? What products have we produced? If you can't summarize your science in 5 sentences to describe what your product is, what your discoveries are, what your results are, you need to go back to grad school and go relearn how to do proper communication. Because what we can do is promote what we've done. There are amazing research initiatives on the station right now. There has been amazing research done 10 years ago. There's been amazing research done in the shuttle days. That communication is lacking. When everybody thinks about NASA, they think about rockets. Rockets are great. They're fun. We're going to a launch next week. Hopefully it's on time on Thursday. But we love those. But we've got to talk about what's come off of station. We've got to start promoting the products. And so we went up to the Hill just a few weeks ago, and we're talking to different representatives, which is what you should do, absolutely do. It's not just send a letter to your congressman. Do it. But when you do it, make sure they realize that if you have a district, if in your district is JSE or KSE, great. You're involved in the space industry. But if you have a farmer in your district The ag tech results, the products that are coming off the station right now for ag tech will revolutionize agriculture. Every representative in the US has a farmer in their district. They are part of the space industry. They don't know it. Communicate it. Advertise what you're doing. Stop being so coy and recluse into your lab. Come forward and shout, we have found this, we have found this, and we have found this. And that's why we need to keep going back to station. We need to iterate. We need to go forward. So the biggest thing on this is communication. Tell what your results are. Tell what your products are. Make sure that the results are heard. That will change things.
Dave?
So going on what Heath said, and I think it was a panel a couple days ago related to venture capital, private investment, where one of the representatives on the panel said, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And when I know that you're for the public, on the democracy side of things, the public wants to know, why do I need this? Why is this important to me? There's the national security argument that is a big part of democracy. But there's the, what does it mean to me? And make that story. The one thing that, and I think that's important communicating that, because NASA in this democracy isn't the only one that's having huge reductions being proposed across the board. If you're not Homeland Security or Defense and veterans, you're getting cut probably 22% or more in the proposed budget. So why is this important to the public, the democracy, the folks that are going to vote? I will tell you, those members of Congress and their staff up there are hearing a lot about more things than from us. When you go to the Hill and you talk about the space station, it's like, what took you so long? And so I think that's one thing on the participating democracy side is, why is this important to the public who is paying for all of this?
So I think we need to be very specific at this critical juncture. And let me be clear, democracy is working, that our congressional representatives are standing up for this. And we've had great success on the Hill with the One Big Beautiful Bill, with the appropriations process. And I think every company here, every person in the audience needs to go to Senator Cruz and begin by saying thank you. Thank you for standing up for our future. Thank you for not ceding space to the Chinese. And now we need you, unfortunately, to do it again and make sure what's in the legislation is actually implemented. And I'm so grateful for Northrop, who's been doing such a good job of that with Halo, and to Boeing, who's been coordinating and leading a lot of this. But now is not the time, I think, even for the big picture stuff. We are in a tactical fight to survive. So everyone needs to call the members who have stood up, very specifically, Senator Cruz, Congressman Babin, the 4 appropriators. We need to target those individuals who control the decisions, control the money, to both thank them, because this is how politics work. They want to know from their constituents that the jobs in their district are related to this, and that you're preserving an economy, you're preserving jobs. We're grateful, and we need you to go the step further to actually implement this. That's what we've got to do right now over the next couple of months if we hope to have a victory.
Absolutely, and yeah. This is a participation sport, right? Democracy is a participation sport. We need to broaden the communication up to the Hill, but we also really need to thank them. There's been longstanding and continuing bipartisan support for the work that NASA does. Senator Cruz, absolutely huge support for the reconciliation bill. The marks right now, both the House and the Senate, are good from an appropriation standpoint. We just need more communication to enable the Hill to keep standing strong and supporting the work that NASA does.
Okay, any other international cooperation? Let me go back to the international engagement and give you guys a chance to pull that thread a little bit further, and having that help us not only in this discussion about the PBR, but also in the budget scenarios. But the longer term, where it all takes us, where you guys, where we see this leading in the future to bigger and better things. I think you guys, you touched on it in places, just to help draw the picture a little bit more clear, put a little bit more emphasis or detail to it.
So I can start with the experiences that we've had with the private astronaut missions, which is these are a wonderful opportunity for U.S. industry to be cooperating with other countries. For those that are unfamiliar, NASA does these RFPs where you can get access to the International Space Station to take crew and science to the ISS for a relatively short duration, for 14 days is the baseline. But Axiom Space has had 4 of these so far. Our 4th one just landed last week, and they have been wildly successful. We've been able to take up a ton of science. Whenever our astronauts are on board, we double the capacity of science that can be done on the ISS. And the result of that is that we are building these ecosystems of cooperation between what Axiom Space is doing and then what other countries that haven't traditionally had access to the ISS, they get to have their crew on board, build those skills, and then be able to take that back home with them. So where's the benefit to the United States, for example? So the benefit to the US is, a best example that I like to give is for our AX-2 mission, we had 2 astronauts from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia that went to the ISS. And one of those astronauts was a woman, Rayana Barnawi. And having a very conservative culture that is able to have access to the ISS, access to scientific activity. Rayana was able to do all kinds of STEM outreach for the students that were in her country, including thousands and thousands of school students that got to see their 2 new heroes that were doing this work on the International Space Station. That has a profound effect on your culture. It has a profound effect on where you see yourself in the universe when you can see people that look like you and sound like you and speak your language on the International Space Station talking about science. And that is a tremendous asset for the United States. The United States enabled that. It's something that we were able to bring. We were able to export that interest, that microgravity research. We were able to export that to another country. And since then, we've had multiple countries. Our last, the AX-4 mission included India, the largest democracy in the world that hadn't had an astronaut in space in 40 years. The last time that all 3 of those countries on AX-4 went to space was, and that was India, Hungary, and Poland. The last time they all went to space with humans was when they flew with the Soviet Union. A few things have changed since then.
First pierogi in space, thanks to Poland and Adam.
That's right. And so those are intangible but very powerful things that we can do to build that LEO ecosystem with our partners, and to get their industry, their scientific community involved in what's going on in microgravity research. Because at the end of the day, we are in a race for discovery. Yes. And we are racing against this country's greatest geopolitical adversary in generations. And the best hope that we have, the best hope that the Western world has for taking our values and our belief systems into space long term to ensure that the scientific investigations that are going on up there have a direct benefit down here is for all of us that are allies and partners terrestrially to take that with us into space. Without that type of industrial diplomatic cooperation, the best we can hope for is to be second to the Chinese. And please hear me when I tell you that they do not care what happens to our country. They don't care what happens to our partners and allies in Europe. They don't care what happens to our partners and allies in this hemisphere. They only care about them. And so it is incumbent upon us to come together as a community, both internationally and industrially, to figure out how we are going to make this work moving forward. Otherwise, all of the cures to these diseases, all the bioprinting of organs and tissue, all of the investigations that we've been doing for better pharmaceuticals and better materials, it's all going to be owned by the Chinese government. And they're not going to share.
And the irony is we're talking about budgets. And what Axiom is helping to unlock is potentially billions and billions of dollars of investment from our international partners. United Arab Emirates already contributing the airlock worth billions on the gateway. We just talked about Saudi Arabia, Korea. They are ready to invest billions, probably tens of billions in the long term. This is an entire second NASA budget that we can access, but only if we honor our commitments.
Well,
and that's where the PBR is penny wise and pound foolish.
And when it comes to CLD, there's an entire, and this is true of any space technology development, there's an entirely, a totally separate appropriations process going on Wall Street, right? It's not connected to the taxpayer at all. It's completely dispassionate. That investment community, that entire appropriations process that's going on Wall Street, they're just waiting for the US government to make some decisions. They're waiting for decisions. Tell us what the plan is. What does the strategy look like? What are you going to do next? And if this country cannot figure it out in time, Wall Street is just going to start making bets. And maybe the US government benefits from it, and maybe they don't. Maybe the big winner is going to be European countries who make investments in American institutions and American industry, and they get what they want because we follow the customer. I know that it's sort of a foreign concept for a lot of people that are involved in this community, but we're here to make money. I mean, of course we want to make the world a better place. Of course we want to do all of the things that we're talking about here and bring these benefits back, but we have shareholders. We have investors that we have to pay back. We have to close our business case. We're not doing this out of the goodness of our own heart. I mean, I am.
Okay.
30 seconds on this.
30 seconds.
Again, so one of the biggest things with international right now is, as from our company being biotech side, we are being courted by multiple foreign governments, Europe, Australia, to link their biotech, their biopharma, their pharmaceutical industry to the aerospace industry. What we're looking at doing is rather than looking at a static aerospace pie, market, budget, chunk of money, we're actually building a bigger pie by now enabling the biotech industry to come into this, the pharma industry to come into this. And we're doing that not just nationally, but internationally. So now you're talking about a bigger return on government investment, putting amazing access that the ISS National Lab in cases has been able to put forward, but bringing in an entire new market into this because they see product, they see ROI, they see a true investable model through the US system because of the access points, because of the processes that we're enabling, so that those other countries can now build a biotech through the US. And that's a game changer with this, and that's a huge international push towards us because we have the access. We lose the access, and ESA's even come to us and said, hey, with the troubles at NASA, would you like to go and work with us? So our adversaries are pulling, our allies are pulling, because they see uncertainty in those access points and what has been established within the US as a firm, good bet, good investment. There's cracks.
Okay, so all good. I'm going to continue this budget discussion a little bit because of some of the questions that are in, and I'm going to try to hit two or three or include two or three of these at one time. The recent $1.25 billion added to the reconciliation bill, how does that affect this discussion? And also, how does this PBR discussion affect the investments on the commercial LEO destinations? And even what NASA chooses. We kind of hit on the NASA part of it, but how does it affect the investment decisions on a commercial LEO destination? I think what the audience is asking for is to peel that onion back a little bit more, just to help understand the impacts a little bit better.
Well, I'll talk about it from the ISS side, and then Jared ought to talk
We've
about
got
it
4 minutes.
on the CLD side. So reconciliation bill was incredibly important. The $1.5 billion that was added covers the US deorbit vehicle. Right? That was a $1.5 billion investment that NASA needed to make. They started it last year without appropriations to cover it. So that would have degraded the resources available to the International Space Station. So huge one-step thing to cover that issue, because without it, they would have started impacting cargo flights, crew flights, research flights. The PBR is another issue, and that's got to be solved because those cuts, right, will continue to impact cargo flights, science, and research. So we had to have the reconciliation bill, and we need a stable budget to NASA, to the International Space Station, so we don't see continued impacts.
Yeah, so the reconciliation, to me, the reconciliation bill's most important feature is that it was a signal to the world and to the executive branch, hey, NASA's important to us. We want to make sure that there's additional funding there than what you have there. And we could talk all day about where it should go and how it should go and all that sort of stuff. But I think ultimately the most important part of that was just the statement that as a Congress, we believe that this funding needs to be there. Okay. From a CLD perspective, I care about the amount of money that's in the program, obviously, for all the obvious reasons. But that's not even, to me, the most important part. The most important part is direction. It's the decision-making process. So if we have $500 million in the CLD program, like what's included in the House bill, but NASA draws out the selection process for the CLDs and the transition and what that's going to look like for another 2 or 3 years, then the $500 million is really just keeping people on life support until you get to a decision point. What needs to happen is the US government needs to decide, how are we going to do this? Who is going to be the service provider for this? And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. I'm not up here to advocate for a specific way, but there needs to be a decision. I was at the White House when the CLD program was created. I remember distinctly having these discussions with NASA about how this was going to work. And when we put that in the president's budget request in 2018, we said, you get 2 years for a down select, and then you need to pick who is going to be the next provider, who's going to be doing this for you when the ISS retires. And here we are, we're halfway through 2025, and we still have no idea what that platform is. We still have no idea what that transition is actually going to look like. And the entire ecosystem is suffering from that lack of direction. So, $500 million, $1 billion, $2 billion, the point is that we need a plan. We need the strategy and the direction, and they need to start executing on it.
And don't bury the CLDs and requirements.
Well, yes. I mean, again, we could talk about that all day, but.
I'm going to call timeout. Dave,
real quick,
Christian,
the $1.25 billion, I think Jared's right. It's a great signaling, but it all depends on what that is on top of. If it's on top of the current level, fantastic. If it's on top of the president's budget request, it still doesn't make up for where we are today, right? Yep. And, it's a great signal. Thank you, Senator Cruz, and that, but it has to keep going, because if I worked at OMB 8 years. I would look at that and, great, I don't have to request that money anymore. Mm-hmm. So my request that I have in this 5 years is going to be $1.25 billion less, because I don't have to take care of that now. So it all depends where the number actually ends up, and is this on top of, or is it filling a cliff?
Okay. We have now crossed the timeline. Unfortunately, I would love to continue this conversation. Frankly, I wish we could.
I think we should. Let's just keep going.
Let's do it. Continuing resolution.
I think
You're
somebody
getting
else.
Dumbucker. You can do it.
Rads, be quiet. In all seriousness, you can see how well we all get along. I'm gonna channel my good friend Jim Free here. Please walk out of here frustrated. Please walk out of here willing to take action. You heard it here from the experts. You've heard the rationale. You've heard the impacts. You've heard why it is important. Please go off and be actionable. Democracy is a participation sport, and we all need to participate and make sure our representatives hear from us. You've heard this. We also need to make sure we do our job as efficiently as we can. I want to thank the panel for the passion and the talent and the dedication to what we're trying to do. Let's thank the panel for their effort, and then we'll go off and actionize all of this. Thank you.